everyone. It is time for another episode of Old Roommates. Today on the show, we revisit Stand By Me, the classic coming-of-age tale. So grab a pack of cigarettes because you know a cigarette's best after meal. And join us.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Old Roommates, the only podcast that revisits pop culture through a middle-aged lens. This is Brian.
And this is Christina.
And we are talking today about Stand By Me, 1986, August was when this came out in theaters. Christina, we begin as we always do, talking about then. Please share with us the first time you saw Stand By Me.
Stand By Me. I believe I saw it in the theater. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember who I was with. But it was one of those movies that I really loved right from the from the get-go.
Yeah.
I really, really loved it. I was, 1986, I was a senior in high school. And I think I could really appreciate a lot of that, like, nostalgia sort of feeling. When you're graduating from high school, you're kind of on that cusp of, leaving your childhood behind and going into, adulthood, sort of, going off to college and things like that. And I think that you do get sort of emotional, and I think this was like a perfect movie for me to watch at that point in time in my life, because it really tapped into that, like, friends and leaving friends and, that bond that you have. So it really spoke to me. I really, really loved this movie from the very beginning. I thought the characters were great. And of course, they're boys. So
Right.
I can only relate so much. But at 12, I don't know. So honestly, I don't feel like a 12-year-old boy, like the group of 12-year-old boys is much different, especially back in the 50s, than like a 12-year-old group of girls in terms of like the conversations that they have and things like that. So I could relate. But I really, really enjoyed this movie.
I was just going to ask you that question. Did you relate, back then, to any of the characters in any way?
I think so. Yes, and we can get into this a little bit later, but I feel like it's that same formula that we talk about a lot.
The four characters. Yeah.
Mostly it's the girls, right?
Yeah.
Sex and the City, Golden Girls,
Facts of
Life. But it's the same formula where you're always going to relate a little bit to everybody.
True.
So, yes, I definitely related to that, the hanging out and the, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I related to it for sure. Mm-hmm. How about you, Brian?
Nice. This was a rental for me, I am pretty sure. And it's funny because I am not a boy's boy. Like, I wasn't, I was not into, like, things that boys are into. So, like, things like the leeches, things like the Lardass story. I vividly remember being true. And I was older. I was a teenager. So it was like, but I remember being, like, just grossed out. And in my mind, I'm like, the movie's just trying to gross me out. And I didn't like it. So, but I liked the movie.
Yeah.
But I just felt like there was, like, some moments where I'm like, oh, it's just trying to be gross.
Interesting.
And I sort of checked out at different times back then. But I remember also liking the movie. I'm pretty sure I bought the soundtrack. Like,
oh my God, the soundtrack was amazing. Matt bought the soundtrack. He said he had that soundtrack.
Carl watched this with me on the Now side, and he's like, "This was the first song. This is the first song on the soundtrack." And I was like, "Wow!" So he really remembered the soundtrack. But
it's a great soundtrack.
It's good.
100%.
But I liked it. I didn't love it then, but I liked it. I just felt like when it became like very boy adventure-ish grossness, I sort of checked out. But
I will say my least favorite part is that the blueberry contest.
Then was your least favorite.
That was my least favorite. It was gross. It took me, the part I liked about it was the four of them together. Yeah. And it took me out of that. And I'm like, I don't care about these characters. I don't care about this story. Yeah. And then it ended up being so gross and ridiculous.
That's right.
That I just didn't really love it. I didn't need that.
I remember my stomach turning to the point where if I rewatched it, like, then on VHS or whatever, I would close my eyes or just fast forward that. Because it's really gross.
And it's not even, the throwing up part wasn't that gross to me. It was the eating of the pie was really gross.
All of it.
And then, because the throwing up part to me was silly. Like, you could tell it was like just sort of like a hose.
Yeah.
Right. And that didn't seem gross to me. But when they like a couple of them just like spit on each other, that's disgusting.
Gross. Yeah,
that was.
And I think also like the stomach churning
the sounds.
For me, it did gross me out, and the puking was really upsetting to me back then.
Sure.
But yeah, those are All right, so jumping into now. When did you rewatch this?
So I watched this one about a week ago or so, and I was very much looking forward to watching this because I remembered how much I loved it. Yeah. And it was also one of those, sometimes we've talked about this, when we have a revisit, sometimes a movie that I really love, I'm afraid to rewatch because I don't want to not like it. But for some reason, I really didn't feel like my opinion was going to change. Like, I really felt so strongly about it that I felt like I'm still going to enjoy this movie as much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because you don't usually feel that way. No. We've been doing this for 2.5 years now.
Yeah. No, usually I'm afraid of watching it because I'm afraid of, not liking it as much. But for some reason, I don't know if I just didn't have... maybe because I didn't relate to it as much or something. It didn't really relate back to my life as it was. Because a lot of times in these other revisits, it'll be like, oh, I related to it so much because I was at a certain point in my life. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I'm thinking about, like, when Harry Met Sally, for example, like the dating and, boys, men and women being friends. Yeah. Like, that spoke really, really strongly with me back then. But then now it's a little bit different. But back, like, watching Stand By Me, it's still a bunch of 12-year-old boys kind of hanging out. And even, today it's still a bunch of 12-year-old boys hanging out. So I guess I didn't feel that fear that I was not going to like it as much. And I have to tell you, I still liked it just as much.
Oh, good. Well, spoiler alert.
So
I guess we can end the episode right here.
Right, that's it. That's all you need to know. But no, I definitely still enjoyed it. Yeah. And I forgot a few things about it. I honestly forgot about the John Cusack character. His older brother. I
remembered he had died, but I thought he died in like war.
Interesting.
I didn't know he just died in a Jeep accident.
Yeah.
And so funny. So we'll dive into now. This takes place in Oregon. Castle Rock, Oregon, not Maine. Right. Which is so strange to me.
I know. And Matt actually mentioned that too. Isn't that so funny?
Carl mentioned it. He's like, hun, it's Oregon.
Just get Matt and Carl in here. They can do this episode.
I was like, no, hun, it's Maine. He goes, no, it's Oregon. I'm like, and I rewound it. I'm like, in Oregon. I was like, why?
I know, it's so weird. And the reason why it's odd, for those of you who don't know, is Stephen King books and movies are... this is the only one that I don't know of set in Maine.
That's so weird. So this is based on the Stephen King novella called The Body. The screenplay was written by Bruce Evans and Raynald Gideon, directed by Rob Reiner.
Rob Reiner,
but it takes place in Castle Rock, Oregon in 1959. But it really begins with Richard Dreyfuss in the car.
Yes.
And I'm only bringing this up. We don't usually go scene by scene, and we won't. But what I found so funny is, so I'm on Letterboxd, which is it's like Goodreads, but for movies. Mm-hmm. And the reviews or the comments are always like, the ending is so shocking, which, spoiler alert, you find out River Phoenix dies.
Yes.
But if you're paying attention,
it says it
right at the beginning.
And this is the first time I ever noticed it. This is the first viewing, and I've seen this movie several times.
I remember that that's the one that died. And
So I remember that he died. Yeah. I remember it being revealed at the end. I did not put it together that he was reading that headline at the beginning of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So Richard Dreyfuss is reading that his friend Chris has been stabbed quite gruesomely in the neck.
Oh.
I mean, because he was trying to break up a fight. And then we flash back to 1959. Wow, who was I not happy to see? Christina. The Gremlins mother.
Oh my god, I know.
I forgot she was in this.
I forgot she was in it too.
As distant as ever, folding the laundry.
Yeah.
Because her son died, and I understand. But
it was a little too much. I felt like they were a little between the parents, and maybe it was okay. I'm going to chalk it up to maybe it was his interpretation of how they were. So maybe they really weren't there. Maybe thinking back, it seemed as though they were completely void of any emotion at all.
Similar to ordinary people.
Yes.
The older son dies, and the younger son is left with these stoic parents that don't know how to act.
But they were at least trying to be in society, in ordinary people. They were.
Oh, they were trying. Yeah,
they were trying. Sure. They were. They were still trying to
be families.
I mean,
Beth in Ordinary People was very closed off emotionally, as you could say the mom in Stand By Me.
Yes,
because you see her. So it's very similar because you see her talking about the girl, right?
Yeah, they're
at the table. She's like, "Oh, the girl," and she's all excited. And then when she's folding laundry, she's like a stoic robot. Yes. The father yells at her and says, "Don't get his mind interested in girls," and blah, 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 blah. And then the other flashback, to your point, when he has the nightmare, and he's just, they're at the funeral, and the dad looks at him and says, "It should have been you."
Yeah.
Well, why couldn't it have been you? But all that to say, so John Cusack shows up in a flashback as the brother. He dies.
I loved him in this. Did you?
One of probably the most supportive older brother in pop culture history.
Probably, yes. 100%. But
it's also how he remembers it too.
It's how he remembers it for one thing, but also I felt that so the way that Gordy is saying is almost like, oh well, I was invisible because Denny died, but it also gives you that flashback at the dinner table. It appears that he's always been invisible, even before Denny died.
Good observation.
And so, for me, it felt like Denny understood that, and he was making up for it by being overly involved in his life, and being overly supportive, and giving him the hat and stuff like that. Yeah. So, I forgave that, because I felt like he was such a good guy. Like, he was even understanding that he needed to be there for his brother. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and the father is a monster.
Oh my God!
Calling his friends a thief and two thieves.
Yes. Did you have closed captioning on for that?
No.
So funny story. Okay. We had the closed captioning on. We usually don't. Emily put it on for something. At the beginning of the movie, I'm like, I can't do that. I'm going to shut it off. So we shut it off, and then we get to that scene, and he's like, a thief and two thieves, and Matt and I both were like, a thief and two thieves? Like, what is he even saying? So we rewound it and put the closed caption back on.
Yeah. That's funny.
But you heard it already without even having.
I remember that line. Thief and, I don't even know if I ever looked up what a phoebe is.
I think it's supposed to be like feeble, like kind of
weaklings,
like weak. Yeah, like a little bit dumb.
I should look it up. Okay, so then my next note is, wow, nice brother. He lets his friend. Mm-hmm. Throw him to the ground and threaten him with a cigarette.
Yeah, he was all set.
So Keifer Sutherland, really quick, this is a middle-aged thing. Like, I remember Keifer being in this a lot more. And being a lot more imposing. And sure, he does threaten to burn someone. And at the end, he's basically going to gut River Phoenix
he's ready
on the side of the river. Which is so, like, is he really going to kill him? What would he do? It seems like a dead body. It's like a dead body is a big deal anyway in that town.
Right.
So you're just gonna kill this kid and throw him in the river.
Why wouldn't he just hit him?
Yeah, well, it didn't need to be.
It didn't need to be. I'm gonna murder you.
Why? Because you want your name in the newspaper.
It seemed really strange. Bit much. He was a little over the top at the end. I agree. I thought he was in it more.
Yeah.
When he obviously was not, but that first scene was so powerful. I think. That's what made us remember him so much.
That's right.
And yes, I remember that too. Chris's brother doesn't even stand up for him.
Shocking.
I mean, and that's more threatening to me, to have the cigarette near his eye. That is more threatening than like him standing there with a knife saying, "I'm going to kill you."
Well, he held the knife up to his throat.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It was up to his throat. Yeah. And then he's like, "Oh, wait, like, oh, yeah, too little, too late, buddy." But yeah, it was a little bit over the top for that.
My biggest note here, in terms of a middle-aged lens or then and now, Vern was not fat.
Oh my gosh!
How the hell? I remember
gosh.
Vern being this like chunky butterball.
He was the fat kid. He was the fat kid in Stand By Me.
He's not even, I would venture to say he's not even chunky in
he's
this.
Average, I think.
He's just not as skinny as
he's
the
not
other
as
ones.
fit. He's a little shorter, I think, than others. But
Also,
it was bizarre to me that
weird.
he was pictured as fat. And I remember when Jerry O'Connell. Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah.
When I forget what his first movie is after that.
Yeah.
But it was when he was an adult and he was attractive and he was fit.
Yeah.
And I remember that whole thing, like,
this
oh my God,
kid, right.
he's the fat kid from Stand By Me. Like, that was a huge,
look
like,
how good he looks
scandal.
now. It's so bizarre.
But looking back now, yes, he was not, I mean, maybe chunky. Like, maybe I would consider him chunky. But I would never call him fat. Now, what do you think that means? Do you think that means that we are just viewing...
Are we so hyper aware of fat shaming now?
Maybe.
But I'm
know.
telling you, I'm watching this going like, I remembered him fat. I remembered him fat.
Yes.
I remembered him chunky. And I wouldn't even say, oh, he's a little chunky. I wouldn't even say that.
Yeah.
Like, I think comparatively speaking, like when you have these like skinny kids, although River Phoenix, I think he was like okay. I mean, I think he looked healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's, who's the other kid? Who's the lead?
Will
Wheaton is like skin and bones.
Yes.
And then there's
Corey
Feldman. And, so I think comparatively speaking, but I'm like, wow, it's not how I remember this at all. I remember him actually being chunky, which is so funny to me to be older now and being like, wait, I thought that? Like, that's weird. What does it say about me? I don't even know.
We all felt that way, though. We all felt that way.
And I want to say, I'll jump a little bit, Vern is... hands down, my favorite character in this movie.
Oh my gosh! And same here. And he used to be the most annoying.
Yes, Christina. Before I was like, oh my god, why is Vern even in this movie?
Right.
But now as a middle-aged person,
he is so damn funny.
Oh, not only that,
and he tells it like it is.
Not only that, I related to him, and maybe that's why it bothered me back in the day.
Maybe
I related to him. Like can I read this dialogue?
Yes.
Okay. After the Lardass story. They were like, oh, wow, great story. So, Vern says, wait, there's one thing I don't understand. Did Lardass have to pay to be in the contest? And then Will Wheaton's like, no, Vern, they just let him in. He's like, oh, good, great story, Gordy, great story.
He's so cute.
Oh, my God.
He really is so
funny.
Enthusiastic about everything.
Yeah.
To me, I thought he was fantastic.
Natural. He seems like a kid.
Very natural.
Very natural.
And you know what's so funny too is I guess he would be like the Rose character, I guess, in Golden Globes, right?
Yes.
But I felt like he was stupid back then.
Yeah.
But he's really just a little naive.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like, that's how Betty White used to describe Rose.
Yeah.
Not stupid, naive.
Yeah.
And that's totally how I felt now. And I was like, I loved him in this time around. He was not annoying at all.
Mm-hmm.
So funny. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we felt the same way.
Yeah. When it's like, it's a goocher, they all flip coins and it's all tails. And he's like, oh God, it's a goocher. It's a goocher. He's like, there's no such thing as goocher. He's like, no. And like talks with the kids dying in a car accident if they got a goocher or something. And oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
This was, I'll jump ahead to you. I love this.
Good.
I thought it was great. And I think that this movie does really, really well. And in fact, I think it's a huge testament to Rob Reiner. We saw this with The Princess Bride also, where the leeches, the train, they're both at this equally scary and funny at the same time.
Yes.
Like they're not going to kill these kids. These kids are going to die of a leech suction or a train is not going to hit them. This, even on rewatch, but it's funny and exciting at the same time. I think that's really tough to do, and Princess Bride does it frequently in that movie, and he does it here too. I loved those scenes.
That train scene.
Yeah.
I mean, even way back then, it was terrifying to me.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my gosh. Just the fact that there's no way out. Like, they're on this huge bridge.
Yeah.
There's no getting away from this train.
Right.
The train is coming. It can't stop. And you're running. first of all, you're trying to save your friend who's like crawling on the thing. Oh my gosh, I could totally be like, oh my gosh, please. But then you're trying to run on train tracks. Oh my god, how terrifying!
Yeah, and those planks of space in between
planks.
them.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna trip. And yeah, you know they're not gonna die, but you just don't know how they're gonna get out of it. You don't see how they can get out of this thing.
A little trivia: that train sequence was so good, and what I meant by funny and scary at the same time is on rewatch.
Yes,
like it still holds up.
Of course.
It's still exciting to watch. It took a week to shoot that train sequence. Yeah. And there were obviously a mix of stunt doubles. They actually had to re-plank that track. So they filmed it. They filmed it twice just because they could run on it. Because it's like those spaces. It's were really. It was a real train track.
Yeah.
They had to re-plank it so that they could actually run on it because the space between the planks was too wide.
Oh.
Yeah. So it took a week for all of that.
Very, very scary scene. In fact, we have. Our in-laws have a house up in Winnipesaukee, and there's a way to get from the house to like the wares, and you go, kind of go the back. You go cut through things, right? You can go through like the woods and stuff, and there's a stretch where you need to walk on train tracks, and there's no way around. Like you are on that track, so. It always reminded me of Stand By Me, of course, but you had to make sure when you knew when the train was coming.
Yes. Although, yeah, but so it's an active train track?
Yes, it's an active train.
Oh.
It's actually a tour, like it goes around like the island. It goes around, so it's a train that it runs quite frequently actually because it goes around and then picks people up, and drops people off, and it goes around. So it's like on the hour almost. You hear the whistle. Thankfully, we're close enough that we would know when we heard it last because we would hear the whistle.
Oh my lord!
But it was always so scary.
Yeah.
I'm like, Erin, are you sure you checked the train schedule?
And
I'm like, Emily, and I'd be with Emily. I'm like, Emily, come on, go.
Yeah, I would be the same way.
Yeah, very scary.
Also, what's funny is the part that I didn't remember as well is when. What the hell is Will's character's name? There's
Gordy.
Teddy, there's Vern. Oh, Gordy, yeah. So Gordy feels the train track a couple times.
Yes.
And he feels it again, and he looks, and he sees the smoke. I'm like, so is this even helping you at all?
Yeah.
But I remember that train, that, him yelling train is like burned. Like, that's like a pop culture PTSD. Like when you hear, like that slow motion yelling of train is like, it brings you back to like being a lot younger, remembering that.
Yes,
that
for
scene.
sure.
Yeah.
So scary.
There was a Golden Girls sighting. Bill, the pharmacist. So when Gordy is in that little 5 and dime store, and he has that sort of flashback, right? There's that guy working behind the counter.
Yes.
So that is, it's an episode called "From Here to the Pharmacy," where he is returned from being in the military, and he's in love with Blanche, and. It's funny because Dorothy, Blanche has no clue who he is. Okay. So she's like, you have to find out his name. I'm going to hide in the kitchen until you guys find out his name. So he shows up at the door and Dorothy's like, who should we tell Blanche is calling? He's like, oh, just tell her Loverboy is here. Would you do that for me? And Dorothy's like, nothing would give me greater joy. And she's like, Blanche, Loverboy is here. And it turns out that before he went to the reserves or whatever, he was a pharmacist. And then he's back and he's just going to be a pharmacist again. And it points out some very shallow attributes of Blanche. Sure. Because she loved him when he was a military guy, but now he's back to being a pharmacist and she's like struggling. But it's a great episode. Huh. And that's Bill the Pharmacist.
There you go. Speaking of episodes, we a couple weeks back, we did put up on Patreon our favorite Golden Girls episodes.
Gosh,
so if you guys haven't checked that out on Patreon, just let me know. And what are we doing this week?
For Patreon, picking our favorite Stephen King adaptations.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so make sure you check out patreon.com/roommates, our favorite adaptations from all the many movies that he has done. So, anyway.
Some other great quotes. Bullshit. Bull true. Oh my God, I love that.
So good. Yeah, I wrote down a few things. I was truly enjoying this movie so much, I didn't really write too much down.
Yeah.
I liked when Teddy was originally dodging the train. When the train first came, Teddy, and he's standing. He's like, "I'm gonna dodge it. I'm gonna dodge it."
Oh, the other
and that was
train.
very scary. Yeah. And then Chris grabbed him.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't need no babysitter. And he goes, you do too.
Well, so I have a similar note. Mm-hmm. This Chris character is like, him and Gordy, their friendship, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it since Stand By Me, where a character wishes they could be someone's parent to give them the support that they need. Yeah,
so this was
is that a negative
one
for you?
Little negative.
Yeah, okay.
Where I just said that, Chris, I understand what they're trying to do. I feel like they spelled it out a little too much. But I said, Chris has an awful lot of wisdom for a 12-year-old.
For sure.
So, yeah, that was just that one scene just really kind of bothered me a little bit where he's just like, I wish I was your parent.
He must have gone to the same school program as the Some Kind of Wonderful kids.
Yes.
Very in touch.
Very in touch.
Self-aware.
Yes.
It's funny because he seems to have a moral compass, if you will, but yet he steals all the time.
Right.
He steals everything from his parents, it seems, right? From his dad.
Yeah.
Stole the gun. He stole other things.
Yeah, he stole the money.
Stole the money and then gave it to the teacher, who then the teacher kept it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in a lot of that, I sort of, like, he obviously is in this family situation that's not ideal, and everybody expects the worst from him. So he's sort of giving it to them.
Yeah.
But what I thought was really uncharacteristic of him. First of all, he has all this wisdom.
Yes,
one thing. And then Gordy is like...
we all know kids are stupid.
Right, they absolutely... just the self-awareness, I think, at 12 is a bit much.
Yeah.
But then Gordy is like, just take the classes with me. You can get in and all that kind of stuff. And that, like, one kind of conversation turned him around and was like, okay. Mm-hmm. Like, it seems like he had a lot more baggage that was holding him back than just, like, one conversation with his friend.
I went with it because his home life seems pretty bleak.
Yes.
And I kind of connected it to, he kept saying, like, tell me a story. And, like, and I wondered if it was, like, just his way of escaping.
Yes.
Like, it's like, oh, here's Gordy, who actually has, like, promise. Like, he's different than these other kids.
Yeah.
And I want to be on his track.
Or maybe he just maybe it didn't even occur to him. Maybe no one ever suggested he take those classes.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the first time Gordy just suggested it.
His dad certainly wouldn't.
Yeah.
Wouldn't.
Maybe that's it.
I think they almost all have abusive fathers, except Vern, right?
Yeah, we didn't know much about Vern's family, right?
No, not much. And Teddy's family, Teddy's dad almost burnt his ear off.
Yeah, so he's in the loony bin.
Yeah, loony bin. And then Chris's dad is a drunk, right?
Yeah.
And, like, really also violent. And then Gordy's dad is just super verbally abusive.
Yes, very, neglectful and everything.
Neglectful and everything else, yeah. So you went negative. Any other negatives? I don't have too many. I have a couple.
Not really.
I have a negative about, in terms of the acting, just one little thing with Will Wheaton. Like, I feel like there were just a couple, because the acting is so strong, there's just a couple times in this movie where it felt a little theater kid.
Yeah, I have to tell you, like, Will was my least favorite.
Performance or character? Okay.
Performance and character, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't really love Gordy. Even back then, he wasn't really my favorite. Vern was definitely my least favorite.
I loved Gordy back then.
But, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of him. There was something about him that just seemed off. He didn't seem like an authentic 12-year-old kid. And I think they were purposely doing that because he just lost his brother and he was going through some new things. But just, I don't know, something about him. And all of a sudden he was like, I have to see the dead body. Like that whole thing, like, it just seemed a little bit, some of his behaviors seemed a little bit off to me in not an obvious way.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was, I think a lot of it, looking at it now, I feel like it was more of a performance situation for me than the actual character.
Yeah, but it's it's similar, actually. It's like there's an intense, when he gets intense, there's intense moments with him, and I felt like this is acting, like theater.
Yeah.
Like, and I certainly didn't feel it then, but I think just being older now and seeing a lot of child actors in movies, and I feel like this was a little a little cinematic, you know?
Yes. And, you know, I think part of the problem was he's surrounded by very strong actors. Mm-hmm. So the other three around him are very, very good.
And it makes sense for the characters. Like, I think that's part of it with Gordy. It didn't make sense. Like you're saying, like, I need to see it now. Like, I feel like his sort of, what's the word? Trajectory wasn't as, like,
right.
clear.
Like, if he just got up and like, instead of saying we're seeing the dead, but like, instead of that whole line, if he just got up and left and then had the Richard Dreyfuss voiceover saying, I didn't know it then, but I just had, you know, like, it would have made more sense. Like, back then it didn't really. Yeah. I have a...
Okay, please.
Oh, I love the fact that, like, Vern, again, I brought the comb. Like, he brings a comb, and then he loses it when he's getting, you know, on the train.
Yes, absolutely. And I love Sincerely.
Yeah.
Sincerely.
He says it so much, and I loved it every single time he said it.
So cute.
Then, what is it? There's the line.
Did I already say that? Yeah.
There's a line. Oh, the Mickey Mouse Club conversation is always funny to me. It was like kind of a classic conversation about figuring out, like, what the hell is Goofy? Yeah. Like, and he's really bothered by it. Vern is, like, really bothered by it. There was one part that Gordy went to get the food. I wrote it down. Where did I write it? Oh, so Vern's complaining that he didn't get, like, something or whatever, and he says, sorry, Vern, I guess a more experienced shopper would have gotten more for your 7 cents. Because he only had 7 cents to do it.
Which I feel like that line is a bit advanced for it. That sort of sense of humor is a bit advanced. That's pretty catty for a 12-year-old. I liked Can Mighty Mouse Beat Up Superman. I like those little... Because it sounds authentic. It sounds like probably what those kids would talk about that.
100%, because it's he said it somewhere. It's like the kind of conversations you have before you get interested in girls.
Right.
Like, that is 100% so true. And I wrote that, then... Oh, and that's the thing, too. Like, he has this conversation... Chris has this really deep conversation with Gordy. Mm-hmm. The next scene is they're having a conversation about Superman and Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
So it was almost that contrast was a bit much, too. When they were talking about... The one thing I do have a little bit of a criticism about the train track before it comes. They're talking about it. Does anybody know when the train's coming? I don't know. Da-da-da-da. All right. And they're contemplating whether they should even go across. Well, they decide to do it, but they're, like, walking super duper slow. Yeah. Like, let's walk a little faster. Like, let's put a little bit of step.
You know what? I was okay with that because they kept showing the space between the planks. There's only so fast you even want to go.
They were downright strolling at some point.
Christina.
They were strolling. I would have walked faster.
Oh my God.
In my experience.
I would be Vern crawling.
Brian, I have this experience of walking
I knew you were going to...
on the train track.
I knew there was a reason you told that story.
That's right. I know how fast you can walk on a train track.
Oh, you were done with that sentence? Yeah. Oh my God, Christina.
That was it.
But I think the planks, they kept showing the planks, they were too far apart. And also, I think, but I still would have done what Vern did. I would have crawled. At that point, that age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been scared.
I could see that.
Falling? Oh my God. Yeah. That's a big drop, Christina.
It is a big drop.
Even when Gordy pulled Vern and they jumped, they landed on, like, rocks.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
That was hard. Yeah, that was hard.
But they're kids. They'll bounce back.
They will.
What is it with you homos? You've been acting psycho all day. Keifer Sutherland. Oh, there's a few of those. Faggots. There's a couple of faggots in there.
Was it mostly the villains that said it, though?
Teddy, Corey Feldman yells at the junkyard owner and calls him a faggot. But then the bad guys also say faggot. Yeah. And then, what do you say, homos?
Yeah.
And
that was, I remember
and then retard is thrown around a little bit, too.
Yeah, that's thrown around a lot. But it's a
sign of the times.
It's a sign of the times. It really was a sign of the times. I did remember, actually, now that we're talking about this, I remember back then, when I first saw it, looking at all the adults, and I'm like, all of the adults are just very insensitive. Like, every single adult in this movie is very insensitive. The store guy, he was insensitive.
Junkyard.
Yes.
Parents.
Like, any adult that you see, they were very insensitive. I just remembered that from last time. Sorry. So there's one other quote. I couldn't remember who it was, but now I remember. It was Ace, which I thought was funny and I kind of laughed at. So the boys are all, two of them know that the body is there. They didn't want to say anything, and neither one of them could keep a secret. And they said something about, oh, I have $1,000 if I do this, or if you don't tell, I'll give you $1,000. There was some sort of thing going on like that. And then Ace says, if either one of you had $2,000, I'd kill you both.
Yeah.
That kind of made me laugh.
Yeah, I mean, Ace is clearly an imbalanced character.
Yes.
All about the violence and the killing and crazy. But it is strange. Because he's all about threats. It's all threats. And then the end with holding up the knife to River Phoenix's throat, you're like, what was the plan there, though?
Right.
It's just so strange.
Well, the other thing, too, skipping to the end, I guess, I wrote down here that it was a satisfying ending, okay, with the boys winning and actually not even taking the body and calling in and anonymously. I felt that was a very satisfying ending. But it bothered me then and it bothers me now. What happens tomorrow?
But that's what Ace said. Ace said this isn't over.
It's not over.
Yeah.
So it's funny that there's never ever addressed, like, how did he retaliate? Like, how did Ace retaliate? It would have been, I don't know, like, I wish there was some sort of sentence that Richard Dreyfuss said. Yeah. Like, oh, Ace, whatever. I don't know.
Ace mulched off to the wrong person and got killed.
Or something.
Ace
or
mulched off to a police officer and is now
away,
behind bars. Yeah, I mean, something.
That...
Yeah, because it's true.
Because you feel like at any given day they're going to get pummeled.
They have one gun between the four of them.
Right.
And now they're all should be in fear of their lives. And you have this homicidal maniac, Keifer Sutherland, knows where they live. It is a small town, and he is promising to kill them.
Yes.
I mean, like, what's going to happen tomorrow? That was that same note.
Right. The only other thing I have for a note that's from a little further earlier on, I really loved the friendship and the encouragement after the whole junkyard loony bin confrontation with Teddy. I thought that was beautifully done. Mm-hmm. It was just so real to me, the way that they were like, he doesn't know, and like they were just so
and it's also felt true to me. What I liked about that is Teddy saying drop it, and that's so human, where it's like someone's trying to console you and you're like and you don't even want the attention, like you don't even want to deal with those feelings because they'll just get worse.
It was so very, very nice. Good scene, great scene.
I did love right before that, I think, is the shut up. It's like, I don't shut up, I grow up. And when I look at you, I throw up. And then your mom comes around the corner and she licks it up.
That was awesome. That was really good. I could totally see it.
There's a lot of moments where I'm like, I totally remember the dialogue. I like when Teddy's like, I like that they laugh. Teddy's like, I cherish these moments. And they all laugh at him.
Yeah, and like, it was nice because they razzed each other all the time.
And that's what friends do.
Yeah, they just picked on each other and razzed each other, but they didn't hold grudges.
Nope.
They were, it wasn't like, they didn't get mad. It was just part of being that friendship. It was like, that's part of it. Okay, yeah, I'm the one getting,
made fun of this time. Yeah. During the Lardass, so we didn't talk about the dream or the story. Sorry, the Lardass story. So back in the day, my stomach would turn and everything over that scene. And now, in my middle-aged lens, I find it very funny. Like the puking, like you're saying, is so ridiculous. It's like a cannon of puke.
Yes.
And I did really like when the mayor says, they're all like, Lardass, and they're like, boom, ba ba boom, ba ba boom, and then the mayor's like, don't pay any attention to them, Lardass. I mean, Davy. That was very funny. So I did a little research on the Lardass sequence.
Oh, interesting.
So cottage cheese was added to blueberry pie filling to give it more of a vomity look. The main pukes, like the big pukes that you were talking about, like the cannon pukes, 5 gallons each.
Wow.
Into those vomit cannons. Really funny. The budget for this, the whole movie budget was $8 million.
Wow,
that's not too bad. $53 million.
I'm surprised they didn't make more than that.
Me too. Sometimes these movies, I'm like, I remember them being such bigger hits, But I mean, it's still
And
a lot of money. It's a lot of money for
this a little
86.
bit too, about like rentals and things like that is not really into the equation.
No,
and
it's not.
in the 80s, it was all about the rentals.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you wonder.
Also, too, we talked about this before. I can't remember what movie we were talking about, but this is also R-rated.
Right.
So
why?
And you couldn't, so meaning like, it is R. It's R. Yeah, it is R.
It is, but I'm wondering why. What made it R?
There's some F words. It's going to be all language. It's all language, right?
But it's so dumb, right?
It's super stupid.
And we talked about
but
Ace
what I'm saying is
Ventura
the
last
box
week,
office.
right? We talked about Ace Ventura last week,
Yeah.
and that was PG-13.
Yeah.
And now this week we're talking about Stand By Me. I would say Ace Ventura probably should have been more of an R.
Yeah.
Or at least toned down more to make it more PG-13. And then this easily could have been a PG-13.
Yeah. So weird.
Yeah.
But I will say, but I think that's why the box office may have been lower.
Yeah, that was
because
always
the
a factor.
target audience to me is like young kid or teenagers or even adolescents.
Yeah, I think maybe
know.
they thought the audience would be adults, but I think I think it works with any age group, to be honest.
I think it also suggests something darker, too. If you give an R-rated movie, you'll attract more adults because they're like, oh, it's based on a Stephen King. It's going to be scary.
Right.
This isn't scary.
It's not scary at all.
So 53 million. But the other surprise with this, Stand By Me, the song by Ben E. King, right? Right?
Yeah.
And so, when Stand By Me came out in that song, 1961, okay? Oh, that's a glitch, isn't it?
Uh-oh.
Because remember, the story takes place in 1959. So Stand By Me is 1961.
But they don't sing
They don't sing it or say it, no.
Yeah.
But, number 4, 1961. In 1986, the soundtrack was so popular, it was number 9.
Wow.
Yeah, in 1986, Stand By Me, the original version. But, so the big question, more, less, about the same. We both said more. Already.
Yeah,
We said that right
I
off the
actually
bat.
liked it more, for sure, yeah.
In River Phoenix, oh my God, right?
River Phoenix.
How good is he in this? And one thing about River Phoenix in this movie, when he's telling the teacher keeping the money story,
Yes.
amazing acting.
He was amazing in this whole thing.
Yeah, throughout. And he has really good, listening. Like, when you're, when the focus is someone else, I don't know how else to say this, but, he's really good at, listening and reacting. We talked about this with Dolly Parton in Steel Magnolias.
Yes.
When the focus isn't on her, she's an amazing supporting actress.
100%.
And I think River in this is an amazing supporting actor.
This is the movie I fell in love with him in, and I mean, just such a talent, such a waste, so sad.
Yeah. Did you ever see Running on Empty?
Love that movie. I want to revisit that movie.
I love that too. Yeah, we should revisit that.
I definitely want to revisit.
And it's more for me as well. Great. I love the energy of this. It's a funny script, and the setups never feel forced. I didn't feel like the dialogue, the little Mickey Mouse, Mighty Mouse and Goofy, all those things didn't feel forced to me. Even there, we talked about that. Even the sort of hyper awareness, it was just distracting for me once.
Just a little bit, yeah.
But the script
probably
I think
just
is
that one
really
conversation,
good, right? And I just loved it. I liked it even more than I did before. I have a match game.
Ooh, I do too.
Ooh.
Do you want to go first?
Now, last week, we both matched. And
I know. I think it was the first time in the history of Old Roommates.
Such a moment.
Matched both questions.
I think you went first last time, so I'll go first this time?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, years later, Vern struck it rich.
Good for him.
With Pez cereal. The only difference is you didn't pour milk on it. You poured blank. So Vern invented a cereal, Pez cereal. But you don't serve it with milk. You pour blank.
I know there's a dialogue in here.
Christina is thinking. She was just rubbing her forehead.
Alright,
she's writing something down.
Alright, I'm just gonna do this.
Alright.
Alright, ding.
Okay. Pez cereal is best served with...
cherry juice.
Oh my god! Oh, Christina. Cherry Coke!
Oh
my god! We're so close.
So close. I think
so
it's half
close.
credit.
I mean, for a 2-word answer, that's wild.
Right?
Yeah,
Seriously.
Cherry Coke, because he said they're cherry Pez.
Yeah, cherry flavored Pez.
They're always talking about, like Coke, and drinking Coke, and you always see signs
honestly,
for it. Yeah.
I almost did, like, soda pop or something.
That would have been great.
But
the judge wouldn't have, judges wouldn't have gone
I don't know, I think they might have.
Really?
Really? Cherry?
I think cherry is the key word.
So cherry juice or cherry soda?
No, I don't know.
I know. Anyway, that was really, really good.
Right.
In my opinion, I think
that was good. All right, let's hear yours.
All right. Oops, I lost my page. All right. So we both agree that the soundtrack was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But did you know they cut one song?
Okay.
From the part when they found the body.
Oh.
They just thought it was in bad taste to play blank.
Jesus Christ. Oh, my Lord.
All right. It's obviously not going to be a match because there's like so many millions of songs out there. This is the other one.
Oh, God.
Okay.
All right, I have it too.
All right.
This is a stretch, but here we go.
This is a stretch too.
I'm not even sure if I even have the right decade right now. But
I'm sure I don't.
All right.
So, yes. So,
oh my God! Wait, no. Sorry. I'm. Okay, fine.
Okay. So, and if you're ready. So the soundtrack was awesome, but they did remove one song.
Yeah.
Because they thought it was going to be in bad taste to play...
The Addams Family theme.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I love it. That's pretty good.
What did you have?
I said Crazy Train.
Oh!
So, anyway.
That's rough. That's a tough
It was a rough question. So, yeah. So, Stand By Me.
Currently on Hulu.
Oh, yes,
As of
that's
this
right.
moment in time, it's on Hulu.
Yeah, it changes all the time, but hopefully it's still there. And that's it for us in this episode of Old Roommates. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to Old Roommates on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And please give us a rating or review while you're there.
And if you're interested in more Old Roommates, including special episodes, bonus content, movie recommendations, and more, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/oldroommates. Comments and ideas can be emailed to us at oldroommatespod@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Old Roommates.
Thanks again for listening. This is Christina.
And this is Brian. Until next time.